Yeah, we're here.
We're here. ACL Live.
We're here and we got a special show.
It is a special show, actually. Normally we're counting down, looking forward to whether it be an open or a national, what have you. This is kind of our own special night. It's our own night, Michelle. This is
whatever we want.
We can do what we want.
Now, I should point out that in this Do Whatever We Want show, the first thing we both wanted to do was hang out with all of you guys and get your opinions. So, just saying.
We haven't really had a chance to do that very often. I mean, obviously, people are chiming in, they're watching, they're commenting as they watch, but we've never really done it where it's fully interactive. Like we're now wanting you to participate as much as possible, right? We want you to say and be reasonable, right? Don't just give us crazy, and you'll see what we're counting down. Don't just give us outlandish names that you think will fit into whatever rankings we're talking about. But I think it's going to be a lot of fun to see what the cornhole community gives us tonight.
Yeah, it's interesting because I put out there in, Facebook land and Twitter land, like, what are some of your top 10 singles? And I didn't really specify anything. So I thought it was interesting that some people put people on their list that aren't pros, and that's fine, right? We didn't really say had to be like who's going to finish in the top 10. We just said who in your mind is the top 10. So interesting to see some of these lists. The way that we did ours was kind of how we think the season could look in terms of the pro field. But I like both options.
Absolutely. It's hard, right? I mean, look, I get very kind of pro specific. I mean, that's what I see the most. That's what I'm around the most. So I get very pro specific, but everyone that's out there sees a lot more people actually than I do. I mean, you see a lot more people than I do, and especially with the opens, I don't get a chance to see a lot of the newer faces as much as everyone else. So it's nice to see what everyone's thinking about. Who are these people, these players that, if we don't hear about them this year, we're definitely going to hear about them in the future. So it's fun.
Yeah, actually, one of the people, and we'll get to the list in a little bit later in the show, but one of the people on the list was Caden Allen. And we've talked a lot about Caden Allen and him not accepting his PDC, but he missed being a pro age-wise by, I think, like days, right?
Right. Unfortunate.
So what? Yeah, unfortunate, but what do you think about him turning that down as good as he is and coming in next season as a pro?
I mean, it's a little concerning in that, a template was kind of set by the Gore brothers last year. Like, yes, you didn't get in, but you can go PDC, and then you can play in nationals, and then you can earn your way in. I mean, look, there's nothing. Yes, a PDC player, you play in, you get in that first bracket, And quite frankly, as a PDC player, you're going to get a 1 seed right off the bat, right? So you have a chance. If you get that win right away, you've kind of opened up your bracket. So I don't know if it was the best thought process, but hey, he's making it happen in the Open Series. So, I can't really doubt what he's doing.
He's definitely making the splash in the Open. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to go through my top 10 list, and then Bernie's going to go through his, and then we're going to go through yours. So if you haven't already posted who you think your top 10 is, and you can go what we're doing, which is kind of how you think this season will finish, or you can just give who you're looking at. Who are the top 10 people you're looking at? But we're here to see it. So we're going to do that. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll go through ours and then take it from there. So we'll be right back. All right, we are back. Bernie, are you ready?
Yes, ma'am. Let's do this.
All right. Just so you know, in the comments here, we've got a Nico Morales fan saying he's going to be top 10 this season. And then Josh Keck saying he actually agrees with someone. I guess that's a first.
Wow.
And then
What?
Trent said, not. Yeah, I know. Right?
That's crazy.
But Trent says we should not be concerned about Caden at all. So, there we go. Jimmy Eubens is in the chat. All right. So we got you guys all in there. All right. I'm going to bring up my top 10. And Bernie and I spoke about our top 10s, and they didn't vary a lot. So we're going to go off this list, and then Bernie's going to tell you a few differences that he has after that. But let's bring it up. So we've got, and I'm going to put us to the side here if I can. There we go. All right. So here we got the top. These are my top singles. First, Mark Richards. I know in previous seasons, people have said that it's hard to stay at the top, right? We've seen kind of this fall off sometimes with people. I just don't think it's going to happen with Mark Richards, personally. I'm very confident leaving him there at the top. And you kind of agreed, right?
I agreed actually with your top 10. I don't know, like we didn't really just, specify if this was actually 1 through 10, but for me, just off what I've seen already this year and just kind of a gut feeling, I've got Jamie Graham and or Devin Harbaugh as possibly my top overall.
I like that.
This season. I mean, Devin just seems different this season. And I mean, once again, I can't, speak to anything specifically. He just feels different to me this year. And you hate, it's cliche in the sports world. Well, he's a man on a mission. He's got something to prove. I mean, everyone knows how good Devin Harbaugh is. So it's not like he's got something to prove as far as he's an elite cornhole player. But I just think there's just something different about him. And I expect to see him quite a bit on national television this year, put it that way.
Agreed. I think Devin Harbaugh is a strong pick. There's a lot of people surprised there's no rookies in this list. It's really hard to take someone off is the problem, Right. I think Fisher Hamilton belongs in the top 10.
Sure.
But when I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, well, who do I take out to get in there?
And one of the things that, I've talked about in the past that I don't think a lot of people, I think they get upset when I say it. The Open Series is awesome. It's fantastic. It's amazing. We really get to see names kind of pop out of the Open Series that become names that we need to know in the future. But there is a difference between playing in the Opens and playing that well and getting deep into brackets and doing it in nationals. And it's a difference. We saw it last season. We saw it the season before. There's a difference. There's simply a difference. And these 10 players, and actually, I'm going to go ahead and tell you one of the my one name that I had on this list that's different than yours, because I actually had 9 of this 10 exactly the same in no particular order. But I have Eric Davis for Philip Lopez Jr. on this list. And it's no knock on Philip. I just think Eric Davis is going to have a different kind of year. Because, everyone talks about the talent the kid has. Obviously, this past weekend, he hit one of the great shots ever, right, that everyone's talking about. The talent's there. I think we're going to see a consistency level from Eric this year that we haven't seen in the past. So that's why I moved him into my top 10 for that reason.
And trust me, I want him in that top 10. I'm his number one fan. The only reason he's not there is because I do see hints of some mindset stuff that worries me a little bit. And I feel like if it wasn't happening, it would be a no-brainer. And that I'm speaking about last season. So that doesn't mean we're going to see that this season. And I'm curious to watch for that.
I mean, look, it's been said not only by me, by quite a few others, that if Eric did, look, this whole PPR, DPR conversation that goes on all the time, and people talk about how PPR doesn't mean much, blah, blah, blah. It does. It's not the end all be all, and that's for sure. But it does mean something. And I think if Eric sometimes just decided, I'm going to make some bags for a little while, just to kind of get in the rhythm and then start hitting some of your crazy shots and then put people under pressure, because he's played a certain way for so long that I think if he just tried to make every bag for a while and kind of up his PPR just a little bit, that takes him to that next level, because he gets in trouble that he's trying to create so much with playing the quote unquote dirty game that a lot of bags are left on the board.
Right.
And it hurts his ability to score.
Yeah, and I saw that a lot last season. I'm wondering if that's going to be different because it felt like, I mean, we talked about today, we recorded today around the ACL. We talked about some of his high PPRs. We talked about his, I think he had an 11.5 at some point or something in the 11s. I mean, that's not typical for him. So
it's not. And how do you beat Eric Davis if he's thrown in 11?
You can't. I mean, that's what
that's what I'm saying. I mean, here's a guy that's been a dominant player in this game for the last several years, throwing probably eights, right? Maybe not
exactly.
You get that guy throwing mid-10s. I don't see how you beat that guy. And it's the same thing. Tony Smith, who's also on your list and who's also on my list, is the same kind of way. You get them throwing a little, taking more time to make more bags. I don't see how you beat them necessarily. And unless your name is Jamie Graham or Mark. I mean, I just don't see how some of these other players get to them, on a consistent basis.
Now, we have some people in the chat really surprised that we're not seeing a Windsor and a Birchfield on this list. But once again, who do you take out?
Yeah.
Who do you take out? I mean,
that's it. I mean, I mean, Ryan Windsor was a big one for me, and I actually sweat on that quite a bit the last 2 days. I mean, I didn't really have him in my top 10, but I had him at 11.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, and that means, yeah, he may not be top 10. He's 11. Well, if he has two tournaments that are better than we think he's going to have, well, then he's for sure top 10.
Correct. Exactly. And I think Noah Wooten is kind of the floater right there. He came out strong this season. And I think he's got a lot of potential of staying in that top 10 range, but that's the one that I think you could maybe see a Windsor slip in and a Wooten slip out. But I mean, who knows? Now, Jamie Graham, Alex Rawls, I think, and Matt Guy, I think those are names that, aren't surprising to be on anyone's top 10. Devin Harbaugh, we mentioned, throwing incredible this season. And I agree with you. He could move into the top 1, 2, or 3 spot. Tony Smith.
I mean, how about Alex? I don't mean to interrupt, I don't mean to interrupt, but how about Alex Rawls this past weekend in the biggest open ever?
Oh my God. I know.
So, I mean, I think that speaks volumes. Yeah. I mean, I think that speaks volumes as to where his head's at.
Well, right? and to the point of, why aren't we seeing rookies on this list? We talk about this open being the biggest open with a stacked pro field. And who did we see in the finals? Pros, right?
Right. And, why don't we see rookies on this list? Well, when you get to your top 10 players are going to be determined quite a bit by nationals as well. And, the rookies haven't had a chance to really do all that much. I mean, some have,
right?
That played PDC, but not everyone has. And so it's almost as if you have to see it. For me, all right, I'll just say for me, I have to see it in nationals first.
Yeah. Think about Mark Richards last season. We didn't have him on a list anywhere.
Right. I mean, look, we're not soothsayers. We don't know. But I mean, from an educated guess, from what we've seen in the past and what this is. Like you're saying, argue with us all you want, but who are you taking out?
Well, and I don't know how you created your list, Bernie, but when I was looking at it, I was looking at, top 10 from last season and asking myself, are any people going to step out of this top 10? And that's where it's, like I said, there's just not room. Like, I don't see Tanner Halbert not being top 10. I don't see these guys not being top 10. So, and Philip Lopez was right there. I think he was 11, if I want to remember. Yeah, I think he's 11. But he is a solid shooter and he's already moving deep in brackets in these opens. And so I feel like, once again, that's one that we'll see. We'll see if he stays in that or goes up a spot or two into that. But we will chat about this a little bit more, but I think we should take a quick break.
Okay. And, we'll take a break. I got a question for you when we come back. I got one.
Okay. We got a question. Okay, so stay tuned for Bernie's question. We'll be right back. Oh, where'd we go, Bernie? There
I'm
we
here.
are.
I'm here.
And we're back. We're back, and we're back with a question, a loaded question from Bernie.
Yeah.
So
Well,
let's hear
I
it.
was curious. I was curious to get
What do you
yours
got?
and the room, if you will, their opinion on this. Outside of Ryan Windsor and a few others that you wouldn't be surprised that are kind of right there in that list. If we were to take it out to 20, like you and I kind of did via some chats earlier, there's some people on that list that make sense if they popped in. Who's someone out there that you think out of, not necessarily out of nowhere, but someone that could creep into that top 10 that you don't really think about being on that level, that just comes out of nowhere this year and just really puts it on us and like, wow, I can't believe that person ended up being top 10 this season?
I mean, I would put some of the rookies in that category just because,
Yeah.
like you said, we have not seen in a national format
Mm-hmm.
what's happening, right? So if they come and take and move one of those people out of top 10, I think that says a lot. And I'll say, because he's in the chat and because he said we got 7 of them right, but not 10, I'd say Trevor Brooks. I think Trevor Brooks, and I'm not just sucking up to you, Trevor, because you're there if you're still there, but I do want to see your top 10 list since apparently we got 3 wrong. But,
Yeah.
I mean, I think he has the potential, and I don't think that would have been necessarily on the initial top 10 list as good as he is.
Right. I just, there's a couple rookies. We've already discussed one of them. A couple of Texas guys come to mind for me that I wouldn't be surprised. Like someone like an Eddie Grindersleeve, and I know
I knew you were going to say you love Eddie.
He's not the quote unquote sexiest player in the world, but he finds a way to get deep in brackets. He just does.
Bernie,
he finds.
Who is the sexiest player?
I mean, I'm talking about his game. His game doesn't like light you on fire when you watch him play. Like you don't think about him the same way that when you watch an Eric Davis play, you're like, oh my God, I can't. I mean, this guy's got more talent than anyone I've ever seen. It's unbelievable the shots he makes. Eddie's not necessarily that guy. You don't want to play Eddie. You don't want to see Eddie in your bracket. I promise you. Right. And so it wouldn't surprise me if he kind of caught fire, made some things happen, and all of a sudden we're in August and September of next year going, wow, Eddie Grindersleeve finished top 10 this year. That's crazy. But he's not a name that we would have put in, that a lot of people would put in their top 20, even though I think he belongs there.
Yeah, I hear you there. And in the comments, we got a Poitras, which I think that could definitely happen based on his performance of the seasons prior to taking his season off and what we've seen so far. So I think that's a good call. It's hard not to put Josh Holland in that top 10.
I was going to bring up Josh Holland, but see, Josh Holland to me is kind of like Ryan Windsor. I mean, to me, he's right there. I mean, would it surprise me? It wouldn't surprise me if Josh Holland finished first.
Right.
You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Like, it wouldn't surprise me at all if we're talking in August and September and Josh Holland's won 2 nationals and wins world. I mean, like, none of that would surprise me.
Correct.
You know what I mean? But yet there are times, and there are times that when Josh isn't feeling it, I don't know if he's necessarily, at least last season. I saw it at times last season. This season might be completely different. There were times when he just wasn't feeling it, and he's done. Yeah. He at least at this point, he's like, some players will just fight through it, and they're gonna fight and find ways to get a point here and there and find a way to get back in a match. And sometimes I feel like if Josh isn't feeling it, Josh is just not gonna wait around for it, right? I think he knows that if it's not in his hand, if he's not feeling it, that he can't find it somewhere. So that's the only reason I kind of had him out of my top 10. But once again, like I just said, in no way would it surprise me if he finished top 10 and quite frankly, top 5.
Same. And people brought up Jay Rubin, Jordan Power, also a couple names that would not surprise me to finish in that top 10. But once again, we're pre-nationals right now, right? So this is a really early top 10 list. We're mostly looking off of lists from last season and asking ourselves who's going to drop off, right? Where are we going to see people make room for more people here?
And it's funny, like you bring up some of these names. We didn't put in our top 20. Like the top 20 you had earlier, we were discussing that when I told you the 3 that I would have put in there, that like the names that all have been mentioned were in that top 20. Correct. Some of them even in that top 15. So, I mean, they weren't like people we forgot about that we thought that we're going, oh, they're not going to have, they're right there in our minds. Yeah. It's just, who do you take out of that top 10? Tell me the people you take out of the top 10. Most people I would think would take 8, 9, and 10 off. and
Correct.
substitute. Right.
Yeah, and then and I agree with them. I agree that any of those names can be interchangeable there towards the end of the list. So we're in agreement there. Now, what was really difficult, which we're not going to talk about in detail today, but trying to do a doubles list, especially pre-national, especially because for some reason these players are not necessarily picking their pro partners in these opens, even though they're there. Really difficult.
It's still. I mean, I understand travel considerations and I understand time considerations, but it baffles me because I mean, you need consistency. You need numbers of bags with partners. I believe they do. I could be 100% wrong, but I don't think that I am. I think it helps you the more bags you get, the more games you get with your partner. I don't see how it's a negative in any way. But
I don't
yet
see how it's
people
a negative either. And I just wonder if, all these players start to become really close friends and things like that. And so as at some point they're just like, "Hey, I'd love to play with you this season." Well, there's only so many
right,
events you can play in with someone else. So they're like, "Well, let me fit you in here, even though I got to kick out my doubles partner and get the, hours together." I
right.
don't know.
I mean, how do you feel about that? I mean, I've
I
said
think
how
it's
I felt
odd.
a number of times.
I think it's odd that we didn't see Almanza Clemmer. We talked about that. I guess we are going to see them at Myrtle Beach together, which I think is a good idea.
Right,
But I think it's weird. I'm not sure if I understand it. Now, once again, we're not professional cornhole players. So, we can only speak to our perspective, but it does
right.
seem like it'd be helpful, at least.
I mean, I can't think of another sport where that would happen.
Yeah.
That
You
has
play with other
double
teammates of an
that
opposing
has
team.
doubles competition in it, and you would just decide, well, I'm not playing with my regular doubles partner unless there was some sort of travel issue. Something came up last minute,
Yeah.
but that doesn't seem to happen in cornhole. And speaking of Duncan Klimmer, by the way, not to go backwards on a tangent, pretty good weekend from Duncan Klimmer last weekend.
Pretty
That
good weekend.
that was, but that was impressive to see. I think he would admit that last season wasn't what he hoped it would be.
I would agree with that.
And do we see a different Duncan Klimmer this season? That's a
Well,
name. That's a name that might be a little bit outside people's thought process on a top 10 player. Do we see that kind of Duncan Klimmer for an entire season? Maybe, right?
yeah. I definitely am interested to see if that continues on for sure. Of course, some other names: Jeremy Schermerhorn, Joe Kay, Joe Niestead. I love that partnership. I think that's going to be a strong team. I believe I had them in my top 10 when I was looking at my doubles list. Like I said, really difficult to come up with a top 10 doubles list. I mean, thinking
It
about teams
is,
like Kamba and Maudlin, like, are they going to be up there? I'm curious, how's that going to go?
right? Is that a team you want to ever play?
No. And
Right?
Maudlin always has different partners. So that's nothing new.
Can you throw your top 10 back up? Is that possible? I know
Yeah,
that I'm
let me
putting you
bring
on the
that.
spot technology
No, you're
wise.
good. Let's see.
And here's a
There we
question,
go.
and I want the room to answer this question. So we'll talk about it for a little bit to give them time to answer. Has the game finally gotten to a point where Matt Guy is not a top 5 player?
Well, he's not in my top 5. He came in at 6 for me.
I'm curious. I mean, I'm curious. I don't know how to answer that question, and I'd be willing to bet my life that he would disagree with that.
Well,
Right?
I would not. Yeah, I would
Yeah.
agree with that bet.
So, but things are getting deeper and deeper, and this rookie class that's coming in again, another rookie class that seems loaded. The deeper and deeper it gets, you don't have to be that far off to drop a little bit.
Well, no, and the problem is that we're seeing, I think it was Cheyenne shot like a 10-point something and lost. So you look at Matt Guy's game, which is a high PPR game, running bags,
Mm-hmm.
aggressive airmailing. And, if he's not shooting basically an 11, he might not be winning.
Right. Isn't that crazy? That
That's
statement you
crazy.
just made is insane.
That's the reality. And because he has an aggressive airmail game, and he hits them most of the time, but it's not every time. It's not 100% of the time. And because of that, sometimes that's going to drop and you're going to give players some points and some room, and that could be the game.
Right. I mean, I just, when you have that aggressive airmail game, when you really crunch the numbers, I mean, it's most of the time, if more than 50% is most of the time, right? I mean, but
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
not 80% of the time. I think some people believe it is. It's not. Now, what might happen is you catch him on a certain game, and he hits 8 out of 10
Yeah,
that he throws
it'll
against you,
happen.
and you're like, oh my god, I can't believe it. But then the next game, he might hit 4 out of 10, just to give you the
Right.
averages, and so it's not. I mean, I've seen it hurt him quite a bit, and with the way that the people play now, and especially the kids, is I'm not ready to say that. I think that once again, just like last season, I think he has something to prove. And was he that far away from being? He finished fourth last season, if I'm not mistaken. That's not that
Yeah,
far
I think he
off.
did.
That's not that far
No,
off,
no.
right? And I mean, we're talking about a season for the ages from a guy like Mark Richards. I don't see a way that he can actually repeat that level of success. So if he finished fourth, and really that can't happen again from Mark, why can't he be in the top 5? But I don't know. I mean, but I am curious what the room thinks about that.
Well, and I think Devin Harbaugh is moving. I mean, he's top
Yes,
5 to me. So
he
I
is
mean,
right now.
there's that's gonna move. That's gonna move, right?
Right.
So there's one, and then we talked about the rookies. We didn't put them on this list yet, but they could very easily take some of those spots as well.
I mean,
I don't know.
Look at an Alex Rawls. I mean, Alex Rawls finished third, right? Last season, was that his final ranking?
Was he second?
It was either second.
No,
It was
second.
or second.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he would even admit that he didn't play his best on TV, but he was there. I mean, Alex Rawls was a regular addition in our television programming, right? So,
Yep.
I mean, that means he's having amazing big tournament after amazing big tournament. Is he somewhat under the radar this season for someone that's still right there? Is that a possibility? It seems like it.
I don't know.
To hear people talk is all I'm saying.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying. Man, I don't know. And I have seen some people say they would take maybe Almanza out of the list, and I just have a hard time. I mean,
I see
Almanza's
he's so good.
I know.
He's so good, but think about the people that they're talking about putting in. They're also so good.
I know. Yeah, we're like beating a dead horse on that, I guess. But
well, look, Noah Wooten for me, and I don't think anyone's a bigger Noah Wooten fan than I am, but Noah can be inconsistent. You can get a player that can go shot for shot with Eric Davis or any of the best shot makers, and then all of a sudden you get a guy that's just missing. And you wonder if he can kind of tighten that up a little bit, because if he tightens it up, he's a top 10 player. If he doesn't, he's a top 20 player. You know what I mean? So I could see the argument with him on the top 10 list.
Now, some people are talking about a Blake Karnick about having a great rookie season this year, so we'll have to look out for him. But we are going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back with some of the lists that you guys sent us over in the chat, in the comments, and see who you're putting in your top 10. So stay with us. We'll be right back. All right, guys, we're back. I've been watching this chat during the commercial, and
Yeah.
Jimmy Humans. I'm not really sure what you're ranking us, Jimmy. Like, are you ranking us how we play cornhole or just as content producers? But I don't know. What do you think about this list here, Bernie? Anthony
What's it?
Ione is number one. Trey Ryder, me, you, and Josh Keck. Now, is this how we play cornhole? Because Josh said he's better than me, and I don't know what we're
It
talking
was
about.
if it was how we play cornhole, I'd be down in the hundreds for announcers. So that's obviously not what he's talking about. I actually like that list. I would put Trey one over Anthony. I think just because Anthony
You
gets
don't even know what
so
you're rating them on.
but Anthony gets they're both trained engineers, right? That's what they went
Correct.
to school for. Anthony can sometimes get very lost in the numbers. And
Okay.
I mean, he can get a little lost in the numbers, and then because PPR means a lot to Anthony Ione.
DPR, I mean, used to be it for him. Oh, he
Yeah,
said cornhole
yeah,
skill. That was his cornhole skill list.
yeah. Well, Jimmy, I'm way down there, man. I probably couldn't beat your pet if your pet plays cornhole.
Well, now that's something to see. Hey,
But I
man,
got Trey one, Anthony one A when it comes to a nap cornhole.
Now, I will say, for the record, that I beat Trey. So, I mean, I'm just saying. I mean, it was just one game, but
is that a fact? Is that a fact?
Yeah.
Wow, I did not know that, so
Wait,
I have
who
to
did he
blast
have on
Trey.
his? Yeah, it was me and Anthony versus Trey and Wally. I think it was Trey and Wally.
Wow.
I
And
want to say.
y'all, wow. So y'all let him have it, huh?
But I threw
Nice.
against Trey, like on that side of the board. So
That's actually pretty exciting
there we
news.
go.
Way to go. Way to go, Mish.
I'm glad Trey's not listening right now. All right, we're gonna go into these lists, and as I was looking at these lists, I have to say, you asked us earlier who could sneak into that top 10 that you may not have thought of, and Josh Seiler put the name that I should have said, which is Nate Stevens. Nate Stevens is so good, and he's just like under the radar completely. But also on his list was Trevor Brooks, which I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Austin Cameron, Fisher Hamilton, Chris Kingsbury, the Gores, Devin Harbaugh, Caden Allen, and Dakota Sully. What do we think?
You know what? He's out on a limb with that list. There are some amazing names. No, I mean, I don't mean that to be rude. He's out on a limb. I mean, there are some names there that would have to play a little bit better than they've played in the past to make that top 10.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't mean they can't, but that does seem that is not a safe top 10 list, put it that way.
Yeah, that's not fun though. This isn't safe. All right, Chandler's got Mark Richards, Tony Smith, Harbaugh, Graham, Windsor, Rawls, Halbert, Holland, Bubenheim. So he put Cheyenne and Josh in his list. Yeah.
I think I've always been a big fan of Cheyenne's, but I think she's missing one shot. I don't know what exactly that shot is that takes her from where she is to the top 10 level. I mean, she kind of is who she is as a player. I think she's missing one shot. I don't know, like, did Cheyenne develop a roll bag? No. I don't know what that shot necessarily is, but I think if her airmail was a little bit more consistent because of the style that she plays, if her airmail was a little bit more, if she could, there's games when she doesn't miss it, but there are a lot of games where it lets her down, especially when you get deep into brackets. And that's hard.
She typically goes for the push through, right? That's her typical shot if there's a bag in front of the hole. The problem could become that we're getting some of these really sticky bags, like a combat. It's a really sticky bag. I mean, she's phenomenal at just collecting bags, getting them in the hole. But I just wonder if some of these bags, these really sticky carpet bags, could present a problem with that shot. I don't know.
If it's a bag alone in front of the hole and it's right by, I don't see a problem there. I think she gets in trouble when there's a few bags around the hole and she's got to hit an airmail to get points. And I think when she gets against the elite players, it's the one thing that kind of lets her down. I would love to see Cheyenne Bubenheim in the top 10. Would love it.
As would I. All right, we got a list in the chat here from Paul, Alex Rawls, Devin Harbaugh, Matt Guy, Jamie Graham if he's healthy, Tony Smith, Noah Almanza, Fisher Hamilton, Noah Wooten, Jordan Power, and Jackson Gore. We've had quite a few of the Jackson Gore or Gore brother on the list.
I'm a huge fan of Jackson Gore. I'm a huge fan. He's a player that I mentioned I would have in my top 20. I think
Absolutely.
and like people hear that and they're like top 20. I was like, you know how good you are, how good you have to be a top 20 player. You know how ridiculously good you have to be. So I'm a massive fan of Jackson. I mean,
absolutely.
Of the top 0.01%.
Exactly.
Right?
Of the pro field. Right. Yeah. And speaking of Jamie Graham being healthy, so he hurt his shoulder when he was throwing the football. What was that? 2 or 3 opens ago. I don't remember when that was, but I didn't realize it was like an actual serious injury. Like he's hurting now. Have you heard about this?
I've heard some scuttlebutt about it. I mean, that's not a good thing to do. I mean, when you're doing what he does for a living, I mean, Jamie does it. That's his job. And that's a mistake that he'll probably never make again. I get it. I mean, your shoulder, I mean, you can easily do some stuff to your rotator cuff throwing a football if you get a little excited, start throwing it too much, all of a sudden throw it wrong one time, rotator cuff's acting up, and then it's always just kind of nagging you. And, when you've got some kind of pain like that in your shoulder, cornhole's not going to be fun.
It's got to be fluid. Your shot has to be fluid. And if there's a little hitch.
And there are times he's fairly physical with the way he throws a bag. And so for his shoulder to be bothering him, that's a pretty significant injury.
I know. I just didn't realize. I thought it was a joke. Like, oh, he's just a little sore from throwing it the day before. I didn't know he actually really hurt himself. So hoping that he does recover from that. All right.
I mean, but it also might be one of those things that it's annoying, right? It's something that's taking his focus. And like we said earlier, this level has gotten so intense and just a little bit off. Just the smallest of margins off your normal game, you're dropping quite a bit at the top level of that pro division. And maybe that soreness, maybe that's just bothering him enough to get him off his game. We'll see.
As opposed to like a major injury where your arm's not working. Yeah, I hear you there. All right, Bryce Jefferson said Graham, Holland, Caden Allen, Jake, Jack, Mark Richards, Rawls, Power, Ruben, Maudlin. So he added a little Frank Maudlin in the mix. I like it.
You know what? As many times as I've tried to put Frank Maudlin away as a pro player at the elite level, I'm not arguing with that. Find a way, Frank. I'm not arguing that. I'm not going to argue that at all. Frank Maudlin finds a way to cause trouble in a bracket. Does he not? I mean, just every time you want to throw dirt on his career that he's no longer elite, he finds a way to stay there. So I no argument.
Yep. No argument from me either. All right. Hunter Thorne chimed in. He said Graham, Rawls, Richards, Harbaugh, Smith, Windsor, Holland, Halbert, Hamilton, Wooten. So he added Josh Holland and Fisher Hamilton on there. All
I can't argue with that. I mean that 10 makes perfect sense to me.
Yep.
I mean, I'm excited. I'm excited to see Fisher Hamilton. I've really not been able to see him play much other than what I've seen on the streaming. I'm really excited to see him play in person.
No. Apparently he's huge, like 6'4" or something.
I've seen it. Yeah, he's a big kid. Big kid.
I know, it's crazy. All right. Sean Duggar said Windsor, Matt Guy, Graham, Richards, Devin, Caden Allen, Alec Ryan, Rawls, Holland, and Davis. I love the addition of Alec Ryan.
I was a huge fan. You beat me to the punch on that one. I like the addition of Alec Ryan there. I mean, talk about a guy. Go ahead.
I love how people put Caden Allen on their list, but yeah, go ahead.
No, it seems like from June, I would say from March or April of last year, Alec Ryan seems to have made the biggest jump, not only just in number of where he stands, ranking wise, but just in people's minds about the top players in the world. I mean, he really has kind of taken that. He's a player that was trying to, that was looking at names on the back of jerseys, trying to climb the ladder. And now his name is a name that people shoot for. So that's pretty cool.
I remember the moment I noticed him, and it was in Salt Lake City. He was in the blind draw, and I was calling some of the games, and I'm like, who is this guy? Like, I remember thinking that, like, who is this? He's so good. Like, I don't even know who he is. And from that moment, I had my eye on him, and it was just like coincidence that he was stuck at the airport with me. We both had our planes were delayed. And so I got to chat with him quite a bit after that. And I was like, you're so good. Like I didn't like had so much fun watching you. And then he just like soared after that. It was really, really fun to watch and has been. And I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up in there.
That's kind of the beauty of the game now, I think, is that, you know, there are certain names that just seem always be there, right? And that's a testament to how great some of these players are. I mean, Jamie Graham's been a top level pro for how many years now? I mean, right. Matt Guy, I mean, like that's so difficult to maintain that level of focus and intensity. I mean, that's just a difficult thing to do no matter what your chosen profession or whatever it is that you're doing, to stay at such a high elite level for so long. And yet there are these names, you know, there's a Mark Richards that comes out of nowhere. There's an Alec Ryan, the people that just find a way, right? Find a way to throw their name into the hat. I think that's so cool.
I do too. Kingsbury, people in the chat are saying Kingsbury should be on that list, and he did have an amazing performance this past weekend. Brandy Cobb weighed in. Shocking. She said all three Cobb brothers and Kobe Costanza, which nobody saw that coming. Devin Harbaugh, Alex Rawls, Fisher Hamilton, Tony Smith, Noah Wooten, and the Gores is
some pretty big names. Some pretty big names she left off there. You know, Kobe Costanza, when I saw him at the college championships, was it last year? It seems like it's been forever ago when I saw him win.
Yeah, almost exactly a year ago. Yeah,
he felt from me, from watching him play, his game looked pro ready.
Correct.
And
I thought the same thing.
I thought he would have had a little bit better season last season. It wasn't bad, but I thought it would have been a little bit better. But his game, it's a really, really solid game.
So when I was looking at like kind of who I would think would go for the draft for the teams, I was looking at stats from last season, and I had Kobe Costanza going, I think, in round 2 originally, and but then I was looking at how he finished last season, and it actually made me move him to round 1.
Okay.
So I mean, I feel like he did have a pretty good season last season, but I feel like it's just been quiet. Like we're not really hearing his name now. So I'm excited to see him show up in the, you know, the national, the pro events and see how he does.
And by the way, speaking of the Cobbs, a lot of chatter from them talking about how much work they've been putting in. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that, because I'm a huge Cobb fan. So I'm looking forward to seeing that.
That is the reality show that needs to happen. Let's be honest.
For sure.
I would watch it. I'm telling you. All right, we got a few more lists to go over, but we'll take a quick break and we'll be right back. Okay, Bernie, we got some more lists. You ready for it?
Yes, ma'am.
How about Jimmy Human's list?
I want
Interested?
to absolutely got to hear
All right. He said not in any order, but Mark Richards, Tanner Halbert, Alex Rawls, Harbaugh, Josh Holland, the potato, JB Graham, Kyle Malone, Almanza, Tony Smith, and Alec Ryan. And Kyle Malone, I know that's your partner, Jimmy, so you're like biased, but I would not be surprised to see him up there at either.
it. I used to love watching Kyle Malone play. He was very cerebral with the way he approached the game. So I would love to see him back at the truly elite level. I mean,
Yeah.
he won a national in doubles last year. It seems like that was a million years ago.
I know, it really does.
It seems like it was literally a million years ago, and it was less than a year ago. But I like that list. Yeah, I really can't argue with it. I mean, look, there's so many names. There's so many. And by the way, Tanner Halbert. All right. I got a question for the room, and I know we're going to run out of time, but does Tanner Halbert go from top 10 to top 5 this season?
He can.
I mean, I'm just curious what everyone thinks, because I obviously he can. I think he can. Part of me wants to say he will, and I don't know what everyone else has thought. I mean, because whenever people are going through, I mean, you see his name. If you go through top 10s, you talk to people that watch, you talk to people that pay attention. His name's always there. But if you ask people for a top 5, his name's not always there. And I'm curious. I'm curious if people think that he's ready to make that jump, or they think, nah, 6, 7, that's kind of his spot.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, the question's out there in chat. Let's go to another list while we wait for that. TJ says Smith, Powers, Birchfield, Graham, Holland, Humans, Hunter, Rawls, Bubenheim, Richards. So Jimmy Humans, you're on a list. Mm-hmm. And we got 2 females on that list for TJ.
I like it. It's Power, by the way. I noticed a lot of people like to put an S on Jamie's name.
I was just reading that. You're right. It is Power.
But a lot of people do it. His last name is Power. Yeah. Yep. They got to throw an S on there.
Got to throw an S. We like it.
I would love, I mean, we just talked about it earlier. I would love to see Cheyenne. Actually, I would love to see any female break into that top 10, regardless of who it is. But I think it would be good for the game, actually.
It would, and the potential is there. It's it's interesting when you watch look at the stats of the women's events of what they're doing, and then when they seem to play in the co-ed events, the stats don't always match, which doesn't really make any logical sense.
Well, it's because they run bags so much. The women on average run a lot of bags, so their stats are a little bit higher when they're playing against other players that are running bags. When you watch a women's tournament, there's not a lot. There are some players that will play a dirtier style of game, but it's not a lot of them. And so you have a lot of players running bags. So your PPRs are going to be higher than when you're playing in tournaments, and when they play in some of the co-ed, some of the open tournaments, all of a sudden their numbers come down a little bit because people just aren't going to let them run bags all day. I mean, that's just from what I've seen. And one thing I've noticed.
I'm curious how that will change with, and Emily Downer. We have obviously Bella, who's the dirtiest style play, but this could look very different this coming season. But I just mean overall, when I'm watching the women, it just seems like when I'm watching the women's event, they're not missing as much. We're not seeing it just seems like a different level of play that I see once it gets into co-ed, and I think that will start to change more and more as the seasons progress, and as we start to pay attention to, it's interesting that's happening. Let me kind of pick that apart and see if I can prevent that from happening.
And it's funny because they have that game. When we talked about Cheyenne before, I mean, Cheyenne can go through any block that you have there. As I mean, Sam Finley's. There's a number of great female players, and you just wonder, especially last season. I was shocked at some of the rankings last season, quite frankly.
Same. Exactly. All right. You want to hear my husband's?
Absolutely. I have to hear it.
All right. Graham, Guy, Richards, Rawls, Halbert, Windsor, Rubin, Ryan, Harbaugh, Power.
I mean,
so he put an Alec Ryan on there. He put a Windsor on there. He put a Power on there.
I mean, you can't argue. I mean, look, he could make a very, a very understandable argument for that entire top 10, right? It may
I
be a
just
little
don't
different.
see how Tony Smith can't be on there. I have a hard time seeing not a Tony Smith not in the top 10.
I agree. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, but who do you take out? So his argument would
I
be
know.
kind of like so who do you take out of that top 10 to put Tony Smith in?
I know.
Do you take Jordan Power, Alec Ryan out? I mean, wouldn't that be probably Alec Ryan, probably the player that you would take out? No offense to Alec. I love Alec, but
because of Tony's previous
overall
history.
skill set. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And where he's landed in the past. Absolutely.
But
Tommy
I mean, you
says
could make
Rawls, Bubenheim, Richards, Holland, Graham, Guy, Halbert, Harbaugh, Ryan, Windsor. So pretty similar, just out of the Bubenheim.
It's all. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's going to be so very difficult to crack that top 10. I mean, you could go through another 20 outside of that 10 of elite talent. And that's what's so great about the game now. I mean, literally, we could start another 20 after that 10 and not come up with a player that you couldn't make an argument for the top 10. You know what I mean? That's crazy.
Yeah. Here's a fun one. Slenders Plays Cornhole said Caden Allen, Nate Stevens, Dakota Sully, Kobe Costanza, all three Cobbs, Justin Burton Jr., Logan Chamberlain, and Alec Ryan. So he's we've got like an age thing going on with that one. Have you noticed the trend there?
Yeah.
Most of the ages with those players.
I love that list. Wouldn't it be great? How shocking would that list be at the end of if it was August?
Well,
people would be
Allen,
Caden Allen, right? But it would be shocking to see that be the case. I mean, all the people that have taken out, it would be nuts. It would be a true changing of the guard.
Hey, Deborah says Eddie Grindersleeve should be in the top 10. Deborah, you and Bernie, you are on a soapbox about it.
I mean, I don't know that I would put him in there necessarily, but it wouldn't shock me. It's a guy that no one really wants to play. And if he's on his A game, his A game is as good as anybody else's, I believe. True. Some people disagree.
Right, the Cobbs have joined the chat. Tubby says Jamie Graham, Devin Harbaugh, Alex Rawls, Tanner Halbert, Tyler Cobb, Matt Guy, Alec Ryan, Tice Cobb, Tony Smith, and himself.
Nice. Nothing like confidence. One. Yeah, I love the confidence.
I love the confidence. I'm here for it. Nick said, never mind, I'll take Tony Smith over Ryan. I forgot about him. War power. Forgot about Tony Smith. Come on now.
Tony.
All right.
Tony's such an interesting player to me. He really is. He and Eric Davis, like, I don't know, man. I just feel talent for talent. He and Eric Davis are kind of the two that I think if they found a way to make their A+ game consistent, I don't think they could lose except to each other, maybe.
Unstoppable. Yeah. Yep. All right. Here's Tyler Cobbs. And he put in order: 1 Jamie, 2 Harbaugh, 3 Rawls, 4 Tanner, 5 Tony, 6 Guy, 7 Wooten, 8 Richards. He's swapping out Windsor for Batson at 9, and then 10 hot take Tubby Cobb. Wow,
let's go! Let's go! I like that one.
I'm here for it. Someone predicted that Caden's going to max out this season. That's probably not so much of a hot take.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a hot take. I see that happening as well.
Yeah, I do.
And good for him. I mean, show out, kid, right? And by the way, does anyone know how hurt Jamie really is? Going backwards in time.
Well, the only reason. So someone brought it up in the chat, right? And then Anthony said something about it as well. And that's when I was like, oh, this is actually kind of serious. So I don't know. This is the first I'm hearing from it. It was just today. So I don't have any details.
Because I was actually feeling that before this season kind of really got going, I thought Jamie Grant, this would be his year. I thought he would end the season number 1.
He did not do well this weekend.
Yeah.
Like uncharacteristic of Jamie Graham.
I mean, he could be sore. He could be having that. That's why I want to know if it's a real thing or if it's just mentally kind of bothering him right now. And if that's the case, well, that's the problem, though, right? The only way that gets better is not using it. You're not using it. You're getting rusty. all of a sudden, it's March, April. You found your game again in March, April. You've already missed one, possibly two majors as far as having your A game, and that kind of takes you down a couple pegs. But I don't know. I before this quote unquote injury bug kind of came to him, I thought it was going to be his season as far as ending with the number one overall ranking, but we'll see.
I know, but even
it's still very early. It's very
early, but I forgot that him and Matt Guy were there this past weekend. I forgot they were there.
I was kind of watching them go through the brackets. It happens. It happens, but once again, the opens are different. I think you get a different level, especially from the top pros. You tend to get a little different level of fire from them. You get a different level of intensity from them when the national season
begins. They're going to make a broadcast. I mean, so making a broadcast is not only cool for your ego because you're on TV, right? But most of these like top level pros, they have bonuses set into their contract, I would assume. So
absolutely. I mean, so it's different.
It's a big deal to get to the bracket. And
so that's why, like when I hear people talking about how well they did in the Open Series, I mean, it's great. Well, I beat so and so, and I beat so and so. Well, how'd you do against them in the first national? You know what I mean? Because it's going to be different when you play them because of those very reasons. It's completely different. You're getting a completely different focus level from those pros in those nationals. And that doesn't mean that you haven't performed an amazing job by beating them in an Open. I'm not denigrating anyone's work. I'm just saying it's a different level of intensity.
Right. Speaking of which, I brought up to Trey and Anthony that I have been correct on my hot take the last 4.
I've seen that. I saw you bragging. I saw you bragging online.
But did you know what Trey's response back to me was?
What was that?
It only counts if it's at a national. These are just opens.
These are just
my
opens.
hot takes don't matter.
They don't matter in opens. They don't. I mean, and people get so mad when we say things like that, but the nationals are different. Look, I mean, people make their careers in this sport off of the nationals. They do.
Yeah.
There have been some pretty good names. Some names that have done super things in the Open Series, and we haven't really heard from them much in the nationals. Right? It's just a different level. And that doesn't mean what you've accomplished isn't great, but if you make it like an analogy to golf, like, back in Tiger's heyday, you might beat Tiger if he played at the Greater Greensboro Open, but you're probably not beating him in the U.S. Open or the Masters. You know what I mean? It's different. It's a different level. Well, he's a bad example because he won half the events he ever entered, but you get my point.
He's an anomaly, yes.
Yeah.
All right, one last list. Josh says Hicks, Smith, Wooten, Stevens, Sully, Allen, Alec Ryan, Dave Ryan, Damon Dennis, Drew McGuffin. Throwing some seniors on the list.
How about everyone not talking about Alex Hicks?
Yikes.
Right? Is that not the first time we've heard his name?
You mentioning it is the first time, yes.
Yeah. So, interesting.
That is interesting. And he did win the conference this past weekend, and he went through a field.
By definition, he did.
Yeah. What does that mean?
That's just a joke. Well, of course he went through a field.
Oh, my.
Let's go.
Okay, and that's a great way, too.
But, yeah, that's probably the best way to end it.
Out on a high. Thanks, Bernie. All right. No, but that is all the time we have.
We need to do this again, though. I think everyone would enjoy if we went to if we went 20 next time, because we already had our 10 or doubles.
Once we have a national, we can talk doubles. It's hard to talk doubles before a national just because a lot of these teams haven't debuted.
So true.
We're kind of just assuming. But,
agreed.
Yeah, we'll see. Jimmy said,
but this was fun.
After that one,
huh?
Dude. He said he's leaving after. Yeah, he's out. That was it.
Dad jokes.
All right, guys, that's it. Everyone, enjoy your evenings, and we will see you all next time.